If the world kicks you in the head, that's one thing. But when you don't do what you're supposed to do, I have no sympathy or empathy for you at all.
When Redd Foxx died in 1991, one name was missing from the funeral. Demond Wilson, the man who played his son for 5 seasons, didn't show up, and he never apologized for it. The truth was painful, complicated, and rooted in a meeting in 1983 that ended their bond long before death ever did. So how does television's most loyal son miss his father's final goodbye? And what really happened between Fred and Lamont Sanford? Join us as we uncover why Demond Wilson refused to attend Redd Foxx's funeral. NBC killed their friendship. October 11, 1991. It began like any other workday on a television set. Redd Foxx was rehearsing for the royal family, joking between takes the way he always had, when he suddenly collapsed during a break. 4 hours later, at Queen of Angels Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center, he was gone. Hollywood reacted instantly. News anchors replayed clips of Fred Sanford clutching his chest and yelling insults that had become part of American culture. Fans mourned the man who made them laugh, without ever asking permission to be loud or rude. One absence stood out more than any other. Demond Wilson never appeared at the funeral. For viewers who watched Lamont stand by Fred through every cruel joke, it felt wrong. This was supposed to be the final bow, the son honoring the father who made him famous. Instead, there was silence. Years later, when a reporter asked Wilson about it, his answer was blunt and unsettling. He said they were not speaking when Fox died and that he had his reasons. He didn't apologize or soften the words. Then he explained something even more surprising. He said he does not attend funerals at all, that even if he had been in the country, he still would not have gone. He talked about burial customs and how he believed death should be handled quickly and privately without long ceremonies. It sounded cold, but that explanation only raised a harder question. How did two men who once trusted each other completely end up so far apart that even death could not bring them back together? To understand Wilson's distance, you have to return to 1977 and a hallway inside NBC. Wilson had just come back from Africa, energized and ready to return to work. Instead, he was stopped by a newscaster who casually told him that Redd Foxx had quit Sanford and Son. The show was over. The shock was not that Fox left. Actors leave shows all the time. The pain came from how Wilson learned about it. No phone call, no conversation, no warning. After 6 years of working side by side, after making decisions together and protecting each other on and off camera, Wilson found out his career had collapsed through a stranger passing by. Later, he explained that what hurt most was not losing the show, but losing the respect he thought they shared. He said they always consulted each other, always talked things through. That hallway moment told him something else. It told him that the partnership was gone. Loyalty had limits. The man he trusted had made a life-changing decision without him. From that day on, their relationship never recovered. The laughter on screen could not survive the silence off it. The funeral in 1991 did not end their story. In many ways, it only confirmed what had already died years earlier. Wilson once said he felt the real ending happened in that NBC hallway, long before Fox collapsed on a set. There was one final attempt to reconnect. Around 1983, Wilson was playing tennis at the Malibu Racquet Club when producers approached him about a 50th anniversary special for Fox. Wilson had not spoken to him since the show ended, but he agreed to make the call. They arranged a meeting at Fox's office. The reunion was not warm. Wilson described Fox as distant and unwelcoming. There was no easy laughter, no repair of old wounds. Afterwards, Wilson told the producers the project was a bad idea. That awkward meeting became the last time they ever saw each other. 8 years later, when Fox died, Wilson did not feel like he was skipping a farewell. In his mind, he had already stood at the grave of their friendship years before. The funeral simply made it public. But that 1977 hallway wasn't the first break. An earlier 1974 choice that Fox never forgave quietly set everything in motion. What decision started this unraveling? The walkout. Wilson refused to join. 1974 should have been a victory lap. Sanford and Son was the top show on NBC, beating everything in its path, from Laugh-In to Johnny Carson. The ratings were loud, the laughter was everywhere, and Redd Foxx was finally getting the kind of attention he had earned over decades on the road. Then, without warning, he walked off the set in the middle of the season and did not come back. Fox was not throwing a tantrum. He was pushing back. He believed the network was treating him like a second-class star, while white performers with similar numbers enjoyed better pay and better treatment. His dressing room was small and worn out. His salary lagged what he felt his success demanded. He said the way NBC handled him felt like punishment for being both successful and black. The network responded by suspending him, writing Fred Sanford out of the show with a thin excuse about a trip to St. Louis, and bringing in Grady Wilson to fill the gap. The show kept rolling, but something vital was missing. Through all of this, Demond Wilson kept showing up. He filmed episodes. He smiled for the interviews. He carried scenes that had once leaned on Fox's fire. From Fox's point of view, that choice cut deep. He expected unity. He believed they should have stood together or not stood at all. When that did not happen, the question quietly formed in his mind and never left it. Why did his closest partner stay behind? The pain made sense because Fox had once gone out of his way for Wilson. When producer Bud Yorkin first suggested a show built around Fox, Wilson laughed at the idea. He could not imagine television ever giving Fox that platform. Yorkin pushed him to meet anyway. Wilson flew to Las Vegas in the early morning hours after Fox finished 2 shows at the Tropicana. They sat in Fox's garage and talked. The connection was instant. Fox was still buzzing from the stage, sharp and overflowing with ideas. Wilson felt it right away, a natural rhythm that could not be forced. Another actor had been considered for Lamont, but conflicts removed him from the running, and Fox spoke up for Wilson early. Together, they shaped the father-son dynamic that made the show feel real. Off-camera, they talked through decisions like equals. On camera, they trusted each other completely. That history made 1974 feel personal. To Fox, Wilson's staying felt like abandonment, not professionalism. To Wilson, the story looked different, shaped by a life that had already taught him how quickly ideals can get you hurt. Wilson's choice to keep working came from a place Fox never fully accepted. Wilson had learned early how fragile life could be. As a child, a ruptured appendix nearly killed him. In that hospital bed, he promised himself he would serve God one day, a vow that stayed with him long after fame arrived. He grew up dancing, acting, and learning discipline, then later served in the Army during Vietnam, where survival depended on caution, not loyalty speeches. He came home wounded, older in spirit, and far less willing to gamble his future for someone else's fight. So when Fox walked out, Wilson saw a battle he did not choose and could not control. He was under contract. His career was still forming. Walking away might have ended everything he had worked for. To him, staying was not betrayal, it was survival. To Fox, it was the ultimate proof that their partnership was uneven. Fox eventually won. He returned to the show with more money, a better dressing room, and greater control. On screen, Fred Sanford was back where he belonged. Off screen, the damage was permanent. Wilson's salary did not rise in the same way, and the quiet imbalance settled in. Years later, Wilson would say something about their partnership that shattered the image fans had clung to for decades. What truth did Demond Wilson reveal that changed how everything before it was understood? Redd never gave me money. For years, people told the same simple story. Redd Foxx discovered Demond Wilson, lifted him, and turned him into a star. It sounded neat, generous, and comforting. Wilson later said that the story was wrong from the start. He explained that he and Foxx were not mentor and student, but 2 working actors placed together by circumstance. Neither man ever handed the other money. Nothing involving cash, women, or substances came between them. From the first day, everything between them stood on equal ground. When Sanford and Son began, Fox actually took a financial hit. NBC cut his Las Vegas pay in half just to bring him to television. Wilson, meanwhile, signed a starter contract that paid far less than people assumed. His pay came in small steps, tied to promotions and appearances, the kind of deal young performers often accept just to get in the door. Both men, in different ways, were being squeezed by the network. That shared struggle mattered. It meant they entered the show as partners trying to survive the system, not as a benefactor and a grateful newcomer. Wilson later pointed out that the most he had ever earned before television matched what Fox now made after the cut. They were both adjusting, both vulnerable, both aware that success could disappear as fast as it arrived. Everything tilted after Fox walked out and then returned. His new deal placed him among the highest-paid actors on television. Wilson's situation did not change. He remained locked into the same contract, even though he had carried the show through Fox's absence. He filmed every episode, spoke to the press, and kept the series alive while the storm raged elsewhere. Yet when Fox came back richer and more powerful, Wilson stayed exactly where he had been. That gap cut deep. Wilson felt the effort he gave was invisible. What hurt more was the sense that Fox no longer fought for him the way he once had. The man who had once argued for his casting now seemed comfortable letting him fall behind. Resentment took root. Conversations shortened. Silences stretched. Crew members noticed the chill even when no one spoke about it. From Fox's side, the picture looked different. He reportedly saw Wilson as someone benefiting from his shadow while complaining instead of pushing harder. Wilson saw Fox as someone changed by success, unaware of how others were carrying the weight he no longer felt. Neither man fully understood the other anymore. As money poured in, Wilson observed something that unsettled him. He noticed that the youngest person in the room stayed steady, while the older men unraveled. He watched Fox give and give, handing out cash to people from his past who always seemed to need more. Old friends returned, acquaintances lingered. Hands were always out. Fox struggled to say no. Wilson described himself as someone who studied people. He preferred distance, calm, and control. He believed in watching quietly before forming conclusions. From that place, he saw Fox slipping into chaos, surrounded by people who fed his ego and drained his energy. What others called generosity, Wilson began to see as danger. By the final season, their relationship had narrowed to working alone. They spoke when lines required it, and stayed apart otherwise. The warmth that once filled the space between has vanished. The set grew tense, careful, and divided. Yet, when the cameras rolled, none of that showed. Fred and Lamont still worked because both men were professionals who understood the job. When the show ended, Fox lashed out publicly, but Wilson was already moving away from Hollywood entirely. He was becoming someone untouched by insults, fame, or old grudges. Where did Demond Wilson go next? And what did he become that made the industry he once ruled over no longer matter at all? From big dummy to God's minister. After Sanford and Son came to an end, Redd Foxx did not slow down. He moved fast and launched the Redd Foxx Comedy Hour on ABC in 1977. The show leaned into what Fox knew best: sketches, celebrity guests, and long monologues that sounded more like his nightclub routines than network television. This was the same man who had earned the nickname King of the Party Records, releasing dozens of explicit comedy albums that fans passed around like contraband. Long before television fame, Fox was John Elroy Sanford, born in St. Louis, Missouri. As a young man in Harlem, he washed dishes at Jimmy's Chicken Shack alongside Malcolm Little, who would later be known as Malcolm X. Both had reddish hair, so Sanford became Chicago Red, a nod to where he grew up, while Malcolm was called Detroit Red. Fox lived hard and fast. He avoided military service during the war years through a risky stunt that left him with heart trouble, then leaned fully into stand-up comedy. Singer Dinah Washington pushed him toward Los Angeles, where a small record label owner caught his act at a nightclub and changed his life. Fox became one of the first black comedians to play white audiences on the Las Vegas Strip, and he never forgot what it took to get there. What stood out on his new television show was not who appeared, but who did not. Demond Wilson never showed up, not as a guest, not in a sketch, not even as a quiet nod to their shared past. After 6 years of building something together, Fox made no effort to include him. Worse, during his stand-up sets, Fox made jokes about being stabbed in the back. He never said Wilson's name, but he did not have to. People in the audience understood. The message reached Wilson clearly. In Fox's mind, the blame had settled. Wilson kept working elsewhere. He appeared in films and television roles, including the performance that originally led to his casting on Sanford and Son. But when Fox tried to revive the franchise with a new series a few years later, Wilson refused to return. By then, he was already drifting away from Hollywood. The shift was deeper than career choices. Wilson was changing from the inside out. Disgusted by ego, money, and endless conflict, he turned toward faith. In the mid-1980s, he became an ordained minister, fulfilling a promise he had made as a teenager while lying in a hospital bed, unsure if he would survive. He founded a ministry, began preaching across countries, and spoke openly about his belief that the entertainment world was spiritually empty. Acting no longer interested him. Fame held no pull. Instead, Wilson focused on people who had been forgotten. He created programs to help former inmates find work, education, and stability, inspired by prison visits he and Fox once did together during their television years. He wrote books warning about movements he believed misled people searching for meaning. The man who once delivered punchlines now delivered sermons. Then, in 1983, the past briefly resurfaced. While playing tennis, Wilson was approached about a tribute special for Fox. He had not spoken to him in years, but he agreed to a meeting. They sat across from each other in Fox's office, strangers bound by memory. Wilson later said Fox was cold and distant. The connection was gone. Wilson walked away and advised against the project. That was the last time they met. 8 years later, Fox died. When the government seized his assets near the end, Wilson watched from a distance and refused to intervene, while another comedian stepped forward instead. What did Wilson say when asked why he would not help? And why did Eddie Murphy choose to act when he did? Watching a king fall. In the late 1980s, one of America's most beloved comedians sat outside his Las Vegas home, perched on a cardboard box wearing only a shirt. Around him, IRS trucks rolled in, hauling away nearly everything he owned. Redd Foxx owed $996,630 in back taxes for years, 1983 through 1986. And the government showed no mercy. They seized his house, 7 vehicles, including a 1927 Model T, a 1975 Panther J72, a 1983 Zimmer, and a Vespa scooter, $12,769 in cash, and a dozen guns, including a semi-automatic pistol. Even his jewelry was taken, the necklace from his neck, the identification bracelet from his wrist. Out of roughly 300 personal items, he was left with almost nothing. Fox later said, "They took my necklace and the ID bracelet off my wrist and the money out of my pocket. I was treated like I wasn't human at all." Sitting there, watching his life disappear, he glanced at the crowd around him and killed. "It seems like somebody would help me." Everyone understood who he meant. Demond Wilson. Wilson's answer, years later, was brutal and cold. "First of all, I don't have empathy for people who do things to themselves," he said. "If an oppressor kicks you in the head, that's one thing. But when you don't do what you're supposed to do, I have no sympathy or empathy at all." He explained that Fox had filed taxes but never paid, treating visits to the IRS like a comedy show. When the trucks arrived, the disaster was complete. "Why am I going to throw good money after bad?" Wilson said. "That doesn't make sense, brother. I'm from the old school." He added, observing Fox's entourage, "The people around him were sycophants. As soon as the money went, they went." Wilson's decision was not cruel. It was practicality shaped by years of life and survival. Fox's financial collapse had been building for years. At one point, he reportedly earned $4 million in a single year, but spent lavishly, compounded by what he called very bad management. He had been married 4 times. His divorce from Betty Jean Harris alone cost over $150,000, plus $10,000 a month in support. His settlement with Joy Yun Chi Chung was $300,000. By 1983, he filed for bankruptcy, which stretched into 1989. By the time he died in 1991, he owed more than $3,600,000 in taxes. When Fox passed, someone did step up, but it was not Wilson. Eddie Murphy, who had worked with Fox as producer on The Royal Family and on the film Harlem Nights, quietly paid for Fox's entire burial at Palm Memorial Park in Las Vegas. Murphy handled it with no fanfare, just loyalty. Countless comedians cited Fox as their influence. Richard Pryor credited him with inspiration. Chris Rock learned from his albums. Jamie Foxx adopted his stage name as Tribute, and Pat Morita called him a mentor. The world understood Fox's impact. Wilson, however, did not attend. He did not contribute. Yet he insists he loved Fox and forgave him. If you watch every episode of Sanford and Son, the proof is there, hidden between the lines and glances. But the irony of Fox's final moments was something nobody saw coming. So what did Wilson say about that love? And what really happened in Redd Foxx's last moments? Love, forgiveness, and the truth behind the laughs. I never had a cross word with him, Demond Wilson insisted in 2014 when asked about Redd Foxx. People say I'm protective of Redd Foxx in my book Second Banana. I had no animosity toward him because I had $1 million contract at CBS to do Baby. I'm back. My hurt was that he didn't come to me about throwing the towel in. I found out in the hallway at NBC from a newscaster. I forgave him, and I loved Redd, but I never forgot that. The love was there. You can watch any episode and see that. And he was right. Watching Sanford and Son today, it is impossible to ignore the genuine connection between Fred and Lamont. The timing, the glances, the unspoken understanding, the way the insults feel affectionate rather than cruel, none of it was acting. Wilson never denied that love existed, nor did he pretend it could erase the betrayals of the past. You can forgive someone completely and still choose not to attend their funeral. You can love someone deeply and still refuse to rescue them from themselves. Then there is the crushing irony of how Fox died. October 11th, 1991. During a rehearsal break for The Royal Family, Fox was chatting with an Entertainment Tonight reporter when a producer pulled him away. The scene was not ready to shoot, but the producer insisted. Fox, already frustrated, performed the scripted actions, walking across the back of a chair and then collapsed. For a moment, no one realized anything was wrong. Fred Sanford had made fake heart attacks famous. Everyone assumed he was joking. "Oh, this is the big one. You hear that, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you, honey," he had shouted countless times on television, clutching his chest with dramatic flair. His castmates, skilled as they were, hesitated. Only when Della Reese knelt beside him and heard him whisper, "Get my wife," twice, did they call paramedics. He was resuscitated temporarily, but was pronounced dead 4.5 hours later. The man who had faked thousands of heart attacks for laughter died from a real one, in full view of those who thought it was a performance. Even Fox's catchphrases like, "You big dummy," continue to resonate. Fans still shout them at Wilson on the street, and he takes it in stride. They related to the character. People still yell, "Meathead" at Rob Reiner. People still yell, "Yo Rocky" at Sylvester Stallone. I really don't mind. On screen, it was comedy. A father belittling his son while secretly loving him. Off-screen, Wilson recalls, Fox began exerting more control over writing, pacing, and tone, leaving him feeling excluded despite appearing in nearly every scene. The catchphrase was humor. The reality was negotiation, control, and ego. Fox used his success to help others, too. He brought jobs to friends like LaWanda Page, Slappy White, Gregory Sierra, Don Bexley, Bea Richards, Stymie Beard, Leroy Daniels, Ernest Mayhand, and Pat Morita. Sanford and Son adapted the BBC series Steptoe and Son, with Foxx portraying Fred Sanford, named after his father and brother, tackling racial humor and reshaping black sitcoms for American audiences. Through all this, Wilson forgave, loved, and never forgot. Today, at 78, he is spiritually fulfilled and at peace. Foxx has been gone for over 30 years, yet the work they created continues to define comedy and influence generations of performers. But there is one final truth about their collaboration that reframes everything: the real legacy of Fred and Lamont. So what did Demond Wilson and Redd Foxx leave behind that goes beyond laughs and catchphrases? Sanford and Son, Legacy, Struggle, and Survival. January 14th, 1972. Sanford and Son premiered on NBC, and it did more than entertain. It changed American television forever. This was not just another sitcom, it was a cultural earthquake. Redd Foxx and Demond Wilson became the first black father-son duo in that capacity on network television. For 6 seasons, the show dominated the ratings, often topping NBC's charts and beating established hits like Laugh-In and The Tonight Show. The series ran until March 25, 1977. Foxx's talent earned him recognition beyond the small screen. He won a Golden Globe and received 3 additional nominations, along with 3 Primetime Emmy nods. In 2004, Comedy Central ranked him 24th in its list of the 100 greatest stand-ups of all time. His influence was enormous, reshaping what black comedians could do on mainstream television. After his death, he was posthumously honored with a star on the St. Louis Walk of Fame in 1992. His mother, Mary Sanford Carson, outlived him by 2 years, passing away in 1993 and resting beside her son in Palm Memorial Park, Las Vegas. But the story behind Sanford and Son is more than celebrity trivia. It exposes how the entertainment industry can destroy black excellence from the inside. Brought together 2 extraordinary black performers and paid them unequally from day one. Foxx's push for fair treatment in 1974 met with corporate resistance. NBC suspended him, but kept the show running with his co-star, turning Wilson into an unintentional weapon against Foxx. The New York Times documented Foxx's demands, and Jet magazine quoted him calling the network's actions racial discrimination. He was correct, but the strategy was subtle. Both men faced pressure differently, ensuring tension between them while NBC profited. Sanford and Son made millions. Foxx died owing $3,600,000 in taxes. Wilson survived by leaving Hollywood entirely. The impact they left opened doors for every black sitcom that followed. The Jeffersons, Good Times, A Different World, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, The Bernie Mac Show, Blackish, and Abbott Elementary. Wilson reflected on their significance in his 2009 memoir, Second Banana. It's just a documented truth, behind-the-scenes factual account of what happened during those years. Redd and I were making history back in those days. We were the first blacks to be on television in that capacity, and we opened the door for all those other shows that came after us. Even while revealing the painful behind-the-scenes truths, Wilson protected Foxx's legacy because their shared accomplishments outweighed their personal conflicts. Their influence persists in pop culture. In 1990, In Living Color referenced Foxx's financial troubles. In 1998, Why Do Fools Fall in Love featured Aries Spears performing a Foxx routine. Family Guy reimagined Sanford and Son in multiple episodes, and Wilson's presence continues to be celebrated worldwide. Today, at 78, Demond Wilson lives in Palm Springs with his wife, Cicely Johnston, whom he married May 3, 1974. They have 6 children. Wilson overcame early struggles, substance abuse, infidelity, and mistrust, and credits his ordination in 1984 with saving his marriage. He lives a quiet, productive life, preaching internationally, writing best-selling books, and appearing in faith-based productions. Financially secure through residuals, speaking engagements, and royalties, he finally enjoys the life he always wanted, far from Hollywood's greed, egos, and moral decay. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out another interesting video by clicking on the video shown on your screen. See you on the other side.